Are we the ones really to blame for Europe's problems? Like this guy says, let's bring in Nigel Farage. He is leader of the UK Independence Party. It is a pleasure to talk to you, Nigel. We've been playing your clips for the past week or so, as have a lot of people. So what do you think of this claim that it's the fault of the United States, the problems that Europe has?
Well, remember, this bloke's an idiot. I mean, a real, complete idiot. And I forgot to tell you, he's also a communist, because when he was a student,
it's a twofer.
He was actually a supporter. No, I'm not joking. He was a supporter of Chairman Mao, which is just about the most extreme form of communism that exists. So the guy is a deluded idiot. I do my best in the European Parliament to try and point this out to the world, but he, in this very short little statement, has now proved everything I've been saying about him for the last 8 or 9 years to be completely true. Look, we all know that under that Clinton period, with Greenspan in charge of the Fed, some big mistakes were made in terms of banking, and some of those illnesses did spread to other countries, including Europe. But the reason the euro is in the state it's in is they've put together a completely artificial currency with countries that never fitted together. They've added on top of that a regulatory cost burden through excess regulation on the environment and employment legislation that is driving parts of Europe towards being a third world country. So, America, you are not to blame.
Well, frankly, I wasn't going to lose much sleep over that claim. But on top of everything else, we now have all of these billions and billions of euros, hundreds of billions of euros going into these bailouts. Where is all that money going?
Well, what it's doing effectively is it kind of goes straight through the governments and straight back to the banks from the member states who've given the money in the first place. And it's very odd. I mean, in the case of Spain, the only buyers of Spanish bonds are Spanish banks. And so the European Commission and European Central Bank give money to Spanish banks to buy Spanish government debt. I mean, listen, the whole thing's a giant Ponzi scheme, isn't it? It's the same money that's circulating round and round and round, and at the end of the day, this whole thing is going bust.
Well, it's a Ponzi scheme, but instead of private investors being the victims, it's taxpayers, because taxpayers are footing the bill for these bailouts, which, as you say, only bail out the bondholders, which are the banks. So once again, it's the middle-class taxpayer that's bailing out the millionaires, correct?
Yes, it is.
Jamie Dimon's the crook. He's taking $4 trillion in U.S. funds.
Over here, sir.
This guy should be going to prison. Him and 18 others. We need to listen to Bernie Sanders. We need to listen to independent Senator Bernie Sanders. These guys sit on federal boards. They take trillions of dollars in U.S. taxpayer bailouts at near zero interest. This man is a crook and he needs to go to jail along with his 18 other cronies. We need to break up the Federal Reserve. This is anti-job. These men are predators on the American taxpayer money. These guys are not the job creators, they're the job destroyers. We need to bring the money back to the people. We need to start getting money to help people stay in their homes. This man is a crook.
We're hearing people heckling Jamie Dimon. Let's listen.
Stop foreclosures now! Stop foreclosures now! Stop foreclosures now! Stop foreclosures now! Give her a homeland land! She's a terrorist! She's the 21st century!
Obviously, this, Christine, was planned, and authorities were quite ready to escort these people out.
When we make mistakes, we take them seriously, and we are often our own toughest critic. In the normal course of business, we apply lessons learned to the entire firm. While we can never say we won't make mistakes, in fact, we know we will make mistakes, we do believe that this was an isolated event.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Wednesday, June 20th, 2012, and I'm Darko. This is my website, ggnonline.com. I have a poll up here, you can go there and check it out. How long will it be until a drone kills the first American on American soil? So far, the majority of people are saying within basically the next year or two. So you can follow by email. You can also help GGN by donating as well. I just want to, just a quick kind of update is that there won't be any links in these videos anymore, at least until further notice. So just basically it's because of my wrist and that. And then eventually, if it doesn't get better, I'll just have to stop. So it says here, J.P. Morgan Chase gets $14 billion per year in government subsidies, says study. So this is what that video is all about. At least some of the billions of dollars that J.P. Morgan Chase lost gambling on credit derivatives once belonged to you. So this is probably true of all of these banks. But either way, it says here that even the CEO of this bank says that the bank would not be in existence still without taxpayer assistance. So, you know, I don't, like I've mentioned before, I'm not like all that savvy in the economy and that, but it does affect a lot of people's lives. And if you just look up like a good definition, there's all kinds of crazy definitions of corporatism, and that may not be what we're living in, but either way, you'll find that the definition of corporatism is pretty similar to reality of what we're living in. And that's why the individual in the beginning said, well, why don't you pay money to help stop foreclosures? Well, because that's not how the system's set up. There's a lot of waste and there's a lot of fraud, and it's all centered around the banking industry, the defense industry, the pharmaceutical industry. But people will always make those arguments about small government, limited government, and socialism, and what the government's there to do. But really, the government is a bunch of corporations put together, and that's how it really works. So, it's just kind of people being naive, I think. It says here, Fed will ease monetary policy this week. It says here, U.S. Central Bank will most likely ease monetary policy when it meets this week, as recent data points to a worsening labor market. So, it says here, and this was what Goldman Sachs said. So they're going to ease monetary policy. Feds expand Operation Twist by $267 billion through 2012. This is from June 20th. So, and if you didn't know, which I wasn't really too sure what this actually did, but it says here that the central bank will prolong the program to the end of the year, selling about basically $250 billion of shorter-term securities and buying the same amount of longer-term debt in a bid to reduce borrowing costs and spur the economy. So, I mean, again, it's probably just the taxpayers getting a bag of shit. So, and speaking of bags of shit, G20 summit leaders alarmed over Eurozone crisis. That's right. So we had Barroso of the EU. The crisis was not originated in Europe. That's right. It was originated in the back caverns of, pipe tobacco-infested round tables and, very expensive scotch and that. And then the engineered crisis operation would actually be carried out through their own private countries, basically their corporations, the Federal Reserve and that. And so, like everything else that the globalists push, they do what? The challenges are not only European, they are global. I love this comment when I saw it. Frankly, we are not coming here to receive lessons in terms of democracy, says Barroso. And this is in Mexico. So I'm not sure if he's referring to the Mexican government, which is a drug cartel, but that's because they're a dictatorship. So it'd be, kind of makes sense that they're not interested in receiving lessons in democracy. So it says here, ministers want to transform EU into federal state. That's right, the United States of Europe. 10 EU foreign ministers, including Austrian, say they are planning on turning the EU into a federal state modeled after the United States corporation. So it's great. They're all a bunch of corporations, right? And then we have too much austerity led to Nazism, says Austrian banker. And we know that the whole period environment was similar to that in the U.S. And they had their big socialist movement in the United States as well, with government programs to reduce unemployment and all that. But really, it was the war that reduced the unemployment. But it says here that the single-minded concentration on austerity policy from 20 to 30 led to mass unemployment. This is, of course, after the, quote, depression, all that, again, created by the banks. So led to mass unemployment, breakdown democratic systems, as if there ever was one. It was a switching from the autocratic or monarchies to what? To what they call democratic systems. And that's, of course, what is the corporatism. At first, they kind of got nationalistic, and then they just dumped the nationalism, and they went straight to corporatism, which doesn't really have a face. I mean, now they have the corporate, they have the flags and stuff, and they fly. You can buy at the dollar store and stuff like that, but it doesn't really mean shit. But it also kind of makes sense, too, because we're talking about national Zionists, right? So Nazism created by the Zionists. And, you know, so it all comes back to the source viewpoint, why the young should welcome austerity. Then we have this. It is surprisingly easy to win the support of young voters for policies that would ultimately make matters even worse for them. Also saw this quote from political theorist Edmund Burke saying society is indeed a contract. The state is a partnership not only between those who are living, but between those who are living and those who are dead and those who are to be born. I think Stefan Molyneux has a quote, something about stealing from the unborn to pay for the living or something like that. But the article refers to a generational partnership. So in the times of austerity, where they're going to have extremists, the Occupy movement, blaming capitalism and stuff like that, you're going to have stuff like this. Extreme vacation. Civilians paid to endure elite SEAL training. So remember, I was just talking about Sheriff's Department going through SEAL training. Now you have civilians basically just working on teamwork. This is from the EU Observer. Financial crisis is boom time for the mafia. So it says struggling banks in the EU, which are basically a mafia. They're a cartel of banks, and like the government's a cartel, a gang of thugs. And let's not forget the big banks, United States type banks, laundering money for the drug cartels. That's right. They were actually busted laundering money for the drug cartels, the banks. So we know about bailouts going on. What I think they're trying to push them on Ireland now, Spain and Italy to be bailed out in $600 billion deal. So it says here that before the countries got basically the money directly for agreeing to austerity programs. So it says here that under the new program, the money will be used instead to buy up debts on the financial market. So they're going to buy the bags of shit, and then, of course, what? They're going to default or whatever, and they're going to say, we need another bailout. And I remember mentioning this like 2 years ago, that it's just going to keep going on. The bailouts aren't going to ever stop. It's just going to be one after another, and that's part of corporatism. Mexico and Canada invited to join the secret Trans-Pacific Partnership. So you can go ahead and read the statements. I'm going to keep moving for time's sake, but notably in both statements, the Ambassador Kirk places the approval of domestic stakeholders, i.e. large corporations, on a level with that of Congress.
Not immunity. This is not a path to citizenship. It's not a permanent fix. This is a temporary stopgap measure that lets us focus our resources wisely while giving a degree of relief and hope to talented, driven, patriotic young people. It is the right thing to do. Excuse me, sir. It's not time for questions, sir. Not while I'm speaking. Precisely because this is temporary, Congress needs to act. Freedom from fear. Because we are a better nation than one that expels innocent young kids. And the answer to your question, sir, and the next time I'd prefer you let me finish my statements before you ask that question, is this is the right thing to do for the American people. I didn't ask for an argument. I'm answering your question. It is the right thing to do for the American people, and here's why. Here's the reason. I didn't ask for an argument. I'm answering your question. It is the right thing to do for the American people, and here's why.
So I don't know if Freeman, from the Freeman perspective, is right. If this guy is actually a clone of the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten, I don't know. I don't know if there was a clone in the picture that I showed of him where he was waving out the window. Somebody said that, oh, it was a clone. I don't know. But the guy looks more evil and more evil every single day. And he's getting better at what he does, which is lying flat out. But in a way, he's not lying, because that's what I think. I think that he believes it. Actually, I know that he believes in this big globalist agenda with, like I was saying, using corporatism as a model, social model. He believes in it. Obama immigration order does audacity of hope mean unchecked presidential power. He's basically deferring deportation of up to almost 1 million young illegal immigrants. He's also asserting executive privilege over the Fast and Furious documents, which show that the U.S. government was basically giving guns and weapons to the drug cartels, which then they can, in turn, Mexico say, well, the guns are coming in from the United States, we need gun control law, which can lead to what? To a holocaust of its citizens by the government. And talking about the lesser of two evils, it looks like Romney's their boy. Anti-Obama sentiment fuels Romney on campaign trail while Henry Kissinger headlines Romney event. And even gay conservative groups are endorsing Romney now. He's the man.